The first thing I remember is the look in his eyes. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his body rigid, his hands still gripping the keys he had just dropped on the hardwood floor. My skin was still warm, my lips swollen, and every ounce of passion that had rushed through my veins turned to acid. Time slowed, yet my heart pounded violently against my chest as if it wanted to tear itself out of me. His eyes, those gentle, trusting eyes that had only ever seen me as his wife, his lover, his safe place, were shattered. He did not scream. He did not lunge. He just looked at me, and that silence was louder than any storm. That was the night I almost lost it all. That was the night my betrayal was laid bare. Before I go any further, I want to pause here and say thank you. Thank you to every single one of you who has subscribed to this channel. To those who are new, welcome, and a big thank you for giving me a chance to share my truth. If you have not subscribed yet, I cannot wait for you to hit that button because your support is the fuel that keeps this channel alive. And please, as you listen to this story, share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and they mean more than you know. Now let me take you back. My name is Emily. I am an American white woman in my mid-30s. On the outside, my life was the picture of stability. I lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, in a 2-story house with a yard that looked like something out of a family magazine. I was married to Daniel, a man who had loved me with the kind of patience and loyalty that women dream about but rarely find. He was steady. He was faithful. He was the type of man who tucked me in at night even when I fell asleep before him. But sometimes, stability feels like silence. Sometimes, loyalty feels like a routine that slowly dulls the edges of passion. And in that silence, I let a dangerous seed take root. Ryan. His name was Ryan. He was my coworker, tall with the kind of charm that could light up a room. He was different from Daniel in every way, flirtatious, bold, reckless with his words. At first, it was innocent. Quick conversations over coffee breaks. Jokes that seemed harmless. Compliments that I brushed off with a smile but secretly tucked into my heart. Then came the texts. They started off about work but grew into late-night conversations. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was in control. But the truth is, those texts made me feel seen in a way I had not felt in years. Ryan made me feel wanted, not as a wife, not as a partner in bills and schedules, but as a woman. One night, after a long day at the office, we stayed late. Everyone else had left. He leaned against my desk, his voice low, his eyes locked onto mine. I knew what he wanted before he even touched me. My heart should have screamed no. My vows should have echoed in my ears. But instead, I leaned in. That kiss, reckless, heated, forbidden, was the beginning of the fire that almost burned everything down. From then on, the lies began. Quick excuses to Daniel about late meetings. Half-truths about work events. My phone turned face down on the nightstand. My heart raced every time Ryan's name lit up my screen. What started as stolen kisses turned into stolen hours, stolen nights, stolen pieces of myself. I told myself I could balance it. I told myself I could be a wife and a lover at the same time. But sin never stays contained. It grows, it devours, it consumes. And then came the night that Daniel walked in. He was supposed to be away on a work trip. I had not expected him home. Ryan and I were careless, drunk on lust and the thrill of danger. The moment Daniel's keys hit the floor, I knew the world I had built was collapsing. I cannot fully describe the sound of a man's heart breaking. It is not a scream. It is not a cry. It is silence. It is the absence of breath, the stillness of shock. That silence cut through me deeper than any words could have. Ryan scrambled, gathering his clothes, muttering apologies that meant nothing. I barely heard him leave. All I could hear was the thundering silence of my husband, the man I had promised forever to, standing there with his world in ruins. Daniel did not rage. He did not throw anything. He did not even speak. He simply turned, walked up the stairs, and closed the bedroom door. The sound of that door closing was the loudest goodbye I had ever heard. That night, I sat on the couch, naked in more ways than one. Naked in body. Naked in truth. Naked in shame. And for the first time in my life, I realized what betrayal really feels like, not just for the one who is betrayed, but for the one who betrays. It is poison. It rots you from the inside. I had no idea if my marriage would survive. I had no idea if Daniel would ever look at me again. But I knew one thing: I had set fire to the very thing I once prayed for. And that was only the beginning of the storm. The morning after was worse than the night itself. I woke up on the couch, still in the clothes I had thrown on after Ryan left. My eyes were swollen from crying, my head pounding with the weight of guilt. The house was quiet, but it was not the peaceful quiet I had always loved. It was a suffocating silence, the kind that presses down on you like a heavy blanket. Daniel was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a mug of coffee. He looked calm, too calm, and that calmness terrified me. His eyes were red, like he had not slept, but there was no rage in them. Just a tiredness that reached down into his soul. He did not say good morning. He did not even glance my way. He simply sipped his coffee, his wedding ring catching the early sunlight streaming through the window. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to fall at his feet and beg him to scream, to curse me, to tell me I was trash for what I had done. But he said nothing. His silence was a mirror that forced me to face the ugliness of who I had become. The hours turned into days. Daniel moved around the house like a ghost. He went to work, he came home, he ate dinner in silence, and he slept in the guest room. He never raised his voice, but his absence, even when he was right there in the same house, was unbearable. Ryan, on the other hand, tried to keep me wrapped in his reckless world. He sent messages, begged to see me, promised he could give me what Daniel never could. But for the first time, I saw him for who he really was. His words were empty. He wanted my body, not my heart. He wanted excitement, not responsibility. The man who once made me feel alive now made me feel cheap. One afternoon, I blocked his number. It felt like slamming a door shut, but even then, I knew it was not enough. I had burned Daniel's trust, and cutting Ryan off did not erase the flames. The weeks dragged on, each one heavier than the last. I tried everything to reach Daniel. I cooked his favorite meals, left notes on the kitchen counter, even slipped into the guest room at night to hold him while he slept. Sometimes, he let me. Sometimes, he rolled away. His silence was the hardest punishment I had ever endured. One evening, I finally broke down. I cornered him in the hallway, tears streaming down my face. "Please, Daniel," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Say something. Anything. I cannot live like this. If you hate me, tell me. If you want me gone, tell me. But please, do not keep shutting me out." For the first time in weeks, he looked at me. His eyes were sharp, piercing, filled with a pain I had never seen before. And then he said the words that would haunt me. "Emily, do you even know what you destroyed? Do you even realize that you shattered the one place where I thought I was safe?" I broke down completely. My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I wanted to crawl inside myself and disappear. That night, instead of pushing me away, Daniel did something I never expected. He sat beside me on the floor. His hands trembled as he reached for mine. His voice was low, raw. "I cannot promise you that I can forgive you yet. But I am not ready to throw away the years we built together. You hurt me, Emily. You cut me deeper than anyone ever has. But walking away, it feels like cutting off my own soul." Those words, spoken not with anger but with a kind of wounded love, hit me harder than any slap could have. In that moment, I realized something. Love is not measured by passion or excitement. Love is measured by what a person chooses to do when they are given every reason to leave but decide to stay. But even as Daniel sat beside me, even as his hand held mine, I knew we were standing at the edge of a cliff. One wrong step, one more lie, and we would both fall. The real test was not just whether Daniel could forgive me. It was whether I could face the parts of myself that had led me into betrayal in the first place. Because secrets do not just vanish. And there was one secret Daniel had been holding back. And when he finally told me, it changed everything. Daniel's silence had been a wall, but that night, when he sat with me on the floor, holding my hand with trembling fingers, I realized he was not just broken by me. He was holding back something of his own. For days afterward, his eyes carried a heaviness I could not read. He would study me like he was searching for something, then look away before I could ask. I thought my betrayal was the only wound in our marriage, but I was wrong. One Friday evening, as the last light of the sun spilled into our living room, Daniel finally spoke. His voice was low, almost careful, like the words might break him if he let them out too fast. "Emily, there is something I never told you. For months, even before you and Ryan, I was drifting. I buried myself in work, in routines. I thought if I kept busy, I could ignore it. But the truth is, I was scared." I frowned, unsure of what he meant. "Scared of what?" I asked, my voice softer than I expected. He looked at me then, really looked at me, with tears brimming in his eyes. "Scared that I was not enough for you anymore." Those words hit me like a thunderclap. Here was this man, loyal, steady, devoted, confessing his own quiet insecurities. I had seen him as unshakable, the rock of our marriage. Yet behind that strength was fear, a fear he had carried alone while I, instead of reassuring him, had sought validation in another man's arms. The weight of my betrayal grew heavier in that moment. It was not just lust or loneliness that had driven me. It was my refusal to confront the cracks that were already forming in our marriage. Cracks Daniel had felt too but never spoken about. I broke down in front of him, sobbing, clutching at his shirt like a child afraid to be abandoned. "I failed you," I whispered. "You thought you were not enough, and instead of showing you that you are everything to me, I ran into the arms of someone who meant nothing." Daniel held me, his arms strong but shaking. For the first time in weeks, he let himself cry against my shoulder. Two broken people, holding on to each other in the ruins of what was once a safe home. That night, we talked for hours. Not in circles, not in accusations, but raw, brutal honesty. I told him everything, the first text from Ryan, the late-night calls, the nights I lied about work. I stripped myself bare, with no excuses, no deflections. And Daniel listened. His jaw clenched at times, his eyes filled with hurt, but he stayed. He did not walk away. When I finished, I expected him to tell me it was over. I expected him to say that love had a limit, and I had crossed it. But instead, Daniel took my face in his hands and whispered words I will never forget. "Forever does not mean we will never hurt each other. It means we choose to fight for each other even when it hurts the most." That was the moment I knew what kind of man I had married. Not a perfect man. Not a saint. But a man who understood that love is not about never breaking, it is about choosing to rebuild. The road forward was not easy. Trust does not rebuild overnight. There were nights when Daniel would roll away from me in bed, and I would cry silently into my pillow. There were days when he would look at me, and I could see the questions burning in his eyes, questions he was too afraid to ask again. But slowly, brick by brick, we started to rebuild. We went to counseling. We started date nights again. We relearned each other, the way we used to before bills, before routines, before life dulled the edges of passion. Daniel began to open up more about his fears, and I made it my mission to reassure him that he was not only enough, but he was more than I deserved. And in that rebuilding, something unexpected happened. Our love grew deeper, rawer, more real than it had ever been before. Looking back now, I see the danger of chasing temporary passion. Lust can feel like fire, but fire only burns. Love, real love, is not fire. It is light. It is warmth. It is the steady flame that keeps you alive through the darkest nights. I almost ruined us. I almost destroyed the man who gave me his everything. But he showed me what forever really means, not fairy tales, not perfection, but the choice to stay when leaving would have been easier. Today, I stand not as a woman who cheated and lost, but as a woman who learned that love is not fragile when it is real. Love bends, love bleeds, but love, when chosen again and again, does not break. Forever means we both chose to stay.